Okay, back by popular demand and me no longer procrastinating anymore. A few things I should mention. Finally found a good version of Filmora I can use. Found some of old lost videos, and part 2 of Samurai Forever will shortly come shortly. This part covers chapter 3 and 4, with twists, turns, simping, shipping and shoto moments. Chapter 3. Naruto's clawed feet struck against the soft sand in a rushed pace, his armored-plated bone legs on full display. Behind him were 9 blue tails that swayed from side to side with his movements. His spear clutched effortlessly in his clawed hand. He felt a flare of Ryatsu from this direction a while ago. It was outside his kingdom's borders, but it was close enough that he couldn't overlook it. After all, it was not in his nature to turn a blind eye to someone in need, and that was exactly what he figured this was. The flare was not controlled like it may have been if someone were using it to scare others away. No, it was rushed and panicked, being used to draw attention towards the user. A large dune was in front of him. With little effort he jumped into the air, clearing it and seeing the scene below him. A small group of hollows, numbering only 4, was surrounded by a much larger one. The blonde hollow dropped down, blowing sand out in all directions. For added effect, the blonde twirled his spear, blue-black Ryatsu flicking from its tip. Cold blue eyes narrowed on the adjusters in front of him. He was part of the larger group and he held a venomous look towards the blonde. I thought I told you to piss off. I don't want your kind near my borders. Hunting those that want to escape this bestial lifestyle we are forced to live. One of the hollows beside the one Naruto was addressing laughed. You have no presence. What do you expect to do? Naruto raised his free hand, frowning as he looked at the hollow that spoke out of turn. Desgara, tear apart. He flicked his hand forward, like it was too much effort, the hollow being ripped apart by what seemed like nothing. This is your last chance. If I catch you near my kingdom again, I won't stop with just one. Now piss off, Yami. Naruto's tone was kept even as he stared down the large hollow. Yami slowly backed away, the group of hollows that moved with him following. This isn't over. One day I will be your equal. The blonde gave a small scoff, and one day I'll bend my knee to the Shinigami like Baragan and his group of fools. With a small wave of his spear he watched the hollows run. Once they were far enough away he let his tails wrap around his legs again, giving him that robed look. Which one of you was flaring your Ryatsu like the world was going to end? He questioned, slowly turning around to see what could possibly be the strangest group of hollows he had ever had the pleasure of seeing. A lion, a shark, a bat and a panther. Not a single one of them would look him in the eye. Sorry, where are my manners? The name is Naruto, leader of Sinfonia de la Furiosa Tormenta, Symphony of the Raging Storm. I assume you were looking for us. Either that or you needed help and have no idea what sector you just walked into. I have to admit though, you were a pretty strange looking group. No offense meant, I just find the build up of your members odd. The shark narrowed its eyes on Naruto before speaking with a soft, feminine voice. You are Vasto Lord. It was a strange enough question, but from the looks he was receiving, she was clearly not the only one who wanted an answer to it. Yeah, I am a little more relaxed than the others, so sorry if I don't fit the picture you expected, but in saying that, ya hurt anyone from my kingdom, and your life becomes forfeit. He stated coldly, taking in the different reactions he received from the group. They seemed to be shifting under his gaze. I'm not going to ask you to follow me, that is up to you. We have already had this life forced onto us. I don't believe in making you do anything more. If you wish to come with, then do. If not, well, you can wait here for a few days then leave. I do not like those that creep around my borders. Naruto turned on his feet when a voice called out, causing him to pause mid-step. Hold ya horses, I'm coming with. It was the panther and from the looks of things he was speaking for the group, as each gave a stern nod. I guess these guys are as well. The name is Grimjaw Jaegerjakes, and I am the most talkative of the group. If ya haven't figured out already? Naruto turned around to face him again, his brow risen behind his fox mask. That's okay, everyone has their reasons for what they do. All I would ask right now is their name. The lion gave a small bow of her head. Francesca Mila Rose. Ulquiorra Cipher, and until now I have had no reason to speak. The bat-like adjusters stated in a dull monotone, his body completely covered with bone, while 2 large wings were attached to his arms. The shark-like hollow was by far one of the strangest things the blonde Vasto Lord had seen. Her form was rather bulky, with large razor-sharp teeth attached to the nearly oversized mask that covered her head completely. A large fin erupting from her back and her elbows, giving her some strange land shark appearance. He watched in interest as she knelt down, her body twitching, and Naruto instantly stopping her. His hands lightly gripping onto her arms and lifting her back to her feet. I don't like people bowing to me, in any form. Not only this, but it looks like the action causes you pain, so please don't miss. The adjusters widened her eyes behind her mask, giving a small nod to the blonde before her. Dear Halabel, I thank you for your generosity and will make it up to you in any way possible. Naruto shook his head. You don't need to make it up to me, just do the small tasks given to you each day like everyone else, and take care of yourselves. That is all I can ask of you. Do this and you will fit in. A few hours had passed as the group traveled back slowly. They were terrified of what they saw. A dark grey cloud fell from the black night sky down to the sand below. It is going to get very loud as we get closer, so when I open the path, enter. You can admire it when we are safe inside, Naruto informed and continued walking forward, holding his hand out as small drops of rain landed on his hand. He watched as those behind him were marveled by the feat. Grimjaw naturally had to give a scoff at what Naruto said. While the rain, which they hadn't even heard of before, was impressive, he doubted that anything could top that. It was starting to become clear that Naruto was telling the truth. They could already hear the thunderous sounds of the clouds. The blonde moved forward faster and placed his free hand against the large cloud, his lips moving but no one able to pick up what he was saying. Then in a flash his tail shot out and stabbed into the cloud, pulling it open for the others. He waved the others to enter and watched as they did, breaking past the wall as the blonde jumped through and let it close behind him. He watched as their eyes went wide. It was nearly silent inside the cloud. A gentle hum, that changed its tone and tune every now and again, was the only noise they could hear, their feet shifting on the strange ground below them. Welcome to my kingdom. The ground you are standing on is called concrete. You can walk on the sand like normal, or along the paths. It matters little, they were made as an experiment of sorts. Some of us like them, others don't. Everything you see around you was built by the hollows that live here. So I would ask you to be respectful. If you'll follow me, we can find a place for each of you. As you may have guessed by now, there are areas that work on researching new technology for us to use. Others that keep our borders clean and search for other hollows that are in trouble. Plus, with recent developments, we have a group that is working towards this thing called farming. They had seen humans doing it during one of their expeditions and wanted to see if we could reproduce the effects. And finally, there is a group of people like myself. We make sure that everything is okay and everyone is happy. If there are any problems, we ask that you come to us first so we may sort things out, Naruto quickly informed the group, watching as their heads nodded dumbly, trying to process everything he had said. He quickly waved them to follow again as he stepped onto the path and gave a small sigh of relief. He rather disliked the sand. It always got caught in between his toes and under his claws. The group walked for a while in relative silence, approaching a large, almost castle-like structure, its large doors swinging open as a rather tall hollow came bounding out. Naruto, how many times do I have to tell you not to just go out on your own? A long time had passed since Naruto had become a Vasto Lord. That much was clear from seeing the new form of the hollow in front of him. A centaur, with a white chest plate, covering her breasts. Long green hair flowed down her back with a few strands falling just past her eyes. A strong white helmet resting atop her head with two large horns coming out from either side. Nell, you truly worry too much. A long blue tail unwrapped itself from Naruto and gently poked the other Vasto's Lord's nose. I was fine. Plus I found some interesting people while I was out there. The blonde trailed off, tilting his head back to the group behind him. Oh, sorry I didn't see you guys there. My name is Nelil 2 Odelshvank, but everyone just calls me Nell. I'm a Vasto Lord along with Naruto here. I don't really have much more to add, so I guess I'll just tag along with you guys for a bit, seeing as someone skipped out on lunch again. Her accusing eyes drifted back to Naruto and she gave him a small glare. Yeah, he knew he was in trouble. Naruto gave a small shrug as he met her gaze, gently sliding a tail along the side her face, causing her to giggle. I felt someone flaring Ryatsu like crazy. I wasn't about to ignore it. I understand you were worried, but you should know that as long as the cloud stays around us, I'm fine. He gave a wide smile which calmed the girl. She still had a small pout on her face but gave a stern nod nonetheless. Fine, but next time you plan to do something like that. Nell paused for effect, something that made the other hollows around him stiffen, not quite sure what to expect to come from her mouth. Take me with you. It can get boring around here without you and the others around. That had definitely not been what they had expected. If their shocked faces were anything to go by, that is. Sure, but come, I will need you to escort the females to their living quarters when we are done speaking. Naruto's words caused the two in question to stiffen and look offended at what they thought he was suggesting. They always give you the same look, Nell remarked before letting out a small sigh. Males and females are kept in separate zones. This is purely because some of the females have been mistreated by male hollows in the past and no longer trust them. There are places where both of the sexes can live next to one another, but Naruto lets them make that choice in their own time. Also, thinking poorly on his actions will not make you any friends around here. He may have dropped a hint earlier, but in case you didn't catch it, he is the one holding the protective cloud around us. Naruto waved them down again, quickly becoming tired of the action. Come on, let's get inside and get finished with the introductory things. It was now done pretty quickly. Each was given this thing called paper. It was something that the humans used to write on. The funny lines on the paper were impossible to read, but the blonde just smiled. I gained some memories of my former life when I became a Vasto Lord. Don't worry, I have taught many people around here how to read and write, he said, not installing much faith in the judges. Tear smirked. Apparently it had the rules and stuff of what they could and couldn't do inside of the cloud. It all seemed simple enough to her when it was explained. She couldn't understand how someone could be stupid enough to need to have a constant reminder. A certain panther sneezed before glaring around him, trying to find anything out of place. Seeing nothing of the sort, he continued to follow the blonde in front of him, desperately trying to remember what he has said. Tia watched the green-haired Vasto Lord in front of her with cautious eyes. She was listing the different groups that worked in this strange cloud city, keeping it safe for everyone else. When she was done, the shark-like Hollow let out a sigh. None of those groups seemed to fit me, she trailed. Nell looked up with a smile. There is one last one, but it doesn't get that many jumping at it. You would be working with Naruto, checking the borders and making sure everyone is getting along well. He can do it himself, but if I don't send people with him, well, he is a trouble magnet. If I leave him alone for too long, then something is bound to happen. Mila Rose wanted to give a shot at gardening, seeing as she had those large paws of her. She might as well put him to work right. Tia felt like smirking slightly. I take after a shark. Tracking is one of the things I excel at. I think that would be the best position for myself. Also, didn't he go off by himself to show the males where they would be staying? He freaking did it on purpose. I'm going to wring his neck. Pardon me, girls, but I feel the fox hunt calling me. Nell excused herself as they stood outside the female section, the Vasto having already covered a fair amount of distance before skidding to a stop. Oh, ask for Cyan-chan. She will show you around and help you out with anything you need. Quickly taking off again afterwards, a large cloud of dust being kicked up behind her. Halabel-sama, was this really the best choice of action? Mila asked in a hushed tone, causing the shark-like Hollow to frown beneath her mask. I don't know, Mila Rose. I will try to get close to this Naruto, see if he has any ulterior motives, and maybe. She was cut off when a cheery voice spoke up from beside them. Not going to work. The voice nearly sung to them, causing them both to look around in shock at having someone sneak up on them. The name is Cyan Sun-san, and I'll tell ya right now, he'll see through your intentions right away. I found that if you are honest with him, he'll be honest back. You need to worry about Nell though. She'll become really angry if she hears of you talking like this about Naruto. Tia narrowed her eyes on the snake. I take it you will tell them? She questioned, getting ready to defend herself and Mila if need be. Nope. Because I was in the same position as you. That was some time ago though, before we moved and all that, but I can understand how you are feeling. Trust me, if you wanted to get away from all the fighting, you came to the right place. Things are pretty quiet here, well apart from when the boys go a bit overboard and start fighting with one another for fun. Also, before you think I am joking, I'm not. They have this giant list of everyone that entered and each one of them agrees to it and the rules they put in place. They can get restless from time to time, but Naruto and Nell have set firm rules that they are not allowed here. And yes, they follow their own rules. Naruto won't come over this way. That's why he sent Nell with you. Also because he likes to play with her and knows doing this will get her riled up. The snake judges informed as she studied the two in front of her. The group stopped moving as they felt small flares from around the cloud, raise up one after another. Seeing the looks of confusion on the two new additions' faces, Cyan gave a small sigh. They are just letting us know that the changeover went fine. Now let's get you all settled in, Mila Rose-san. I help with the farming and gardening so I can take you with me in the morning. But sadly, Halabel-san, Naruto is very picky about who he takes out of the cloud. You'll have to prove to him that you are not your average judges. He doesn't want to see us hurt, so he will only take the best of the best that want to go out with him. But anyway, come, let's get you settled in. Naruto looked at the two in front of him with his lips pressed into a thin line. Around his neck seemed to sit his spear in necklace form, hanging horizontally with the sharp tips pointing out on each side. You both want to join me on patrols? That right? His question was quickly answered by two silent but stiff nods. Well, your Ryatsu seemed to be quite strong, but having large amounts of Ryatsu does not make you strong. It is how you use it. The blonde gave his head a small shake, watching as the panther seemed to become quite aggravated at what he said. It seemed like a confrontation was rapidly approaching. Thankfully for all those in the area, a gentle cough caused the two hotheads to turn their heads to the side. Tia looked over the group of three. Yes, there were quite a few hollows that had gathered around them. She even heard some putting bets down on what move Naruto would use to show them they weren't ready. The new arrivals had only been here a day, so they were still trying to get used to some of the strange everyday things that hollows did around here. Plus, they were still trying to find a place where they felt they could be of help. Tia-san, what can I do for you? Naruto questioned, somewhat happy for the interruption. Halabel gave a small nod of her head. I too would like to join this patrol group. I have heard you are hesitant to take new members in, so I propose that myself, Grimjaw and Ulquiorra have a mock battle, showing you that we are capable of handling ourselves. Of course, if you're still not pleased afterwards, we will drop the subject and find another group to join. Naruto stroked the fangs that rested on his face in thought. I do like people that can think. If Grimjaw and Ulquiorra agree, I have no problems. Smart move, Tia-san. The fox Vasto Lord watched as the bat took to the air, flying high above the two ground-bound judges. Naruto bit into his thumbs, flicking him out to the side and erecting a tall wind tower around them. You can not go as hard as you want. Without killing one another, of course. He received 3 quick nods before the trio quickly got back to work. One thing he noticed quickly was that Grimjaw was not one for thinking, but he had no issues with following commands. He watched as they alternated between 2v1 and free-for-all. He had already decided that he would accept them if they asked. Each of them seemed to have this certain strength of will, one that he found pleasant. For every attack, there was a counter-attack that was blocked. It was like a well-choreographed fight. He had seen enough. He started a slow clap and lowered the barrier that split them from the observers. The judges stopped what they were doing, turning to face Naruto as he continued to clap. Pretty good. I see you 3 can work well together. The blonde trailed, not giving an outright answer. Tear once again tried to bow before Naruto. Despite what he said earlier, she was taught to respect others, even if she did not trust the blonde at the moment. His strength and ability to create some semblance of peace in these wastelands. As she lowered herself, despite her protesting body, Naruto quickly grabbed onto her arms and lifted her back to her feet. I thought I told ya not to do that, Tear-san. The judges once again just gave a small nod as Naruto removed his hands and gave her a smile. Sorry, but have you made a decision? Naruto cracked his neck to the side, his spear swaying with the action. It was something that Tear thought about. She hadn't seen Nelliel carry a weapon around with her. And while Naruto had those sharp claws of his, plus his strange weather powers, she still remembered that spear and the way he bent Ryatsu with it. Was it possible for him to change its size, making it easier for him to carry around? Naruto cleared his throat, giving a small scratch to the back of his head. Yeah, I'll take you guys out with me, but first I want to train you each a little. Your skills are good, but a little rough around the edges. If that is all good with you, meet me back here tomorrow. The Vasto Lord slowly moved away from the trio, giving him an over-the-shoulder wave, his form vanishing into the distance as the sound of hooves entered their ears. Nell coming to a skidding stop beside the group, her head snapping around. It was at this point that Tear noticed a necklace much like Naruto's around her neck. Where'd he go? I could have sworn he was just here, Nell practically roared. A few hollows around them took nervous steps backwards. Naruto headed over towards the Granzas. A rather spooked hollow spluttered out, causing Nell to give a large smile. Thank you, that hollow always skips out on his meals. The Vasto gave a small sigh before galloping after the fox. The hollows around the trio lifted their fingers, slowly counting down for something by the looks of things. Lady Nellil, 2 judges called as they came running huffing and puffing. The bystanders just lifted their hands in the direction she took off in, watching the 2 strange-looking hollows chasing down Nelliel. Tear looked in the direction of where everyone seemed to be running. Nelliel-san seems to be quite attached to Naruto-san. Ulquiorra looked over in the same direction, giving a small nod. Some of the others say that they have been partners since Naruto-sama became judges. Boy, how the hell do you know that? Grimjaw nearly roared at the bat like Hollow. Because I actually pay attention when people around me talk, the winged man stated without emotion. TSK** team, Kami was a goddess in every sense of the word, normally anyway. 200 years ago she made a deal with her sister, one that caused them to swap jobs with one another for some time. You could picture her surprise when she arrived back and found that one of her special souls was no longer in her domain. Searching for one Uzumaki Naruto was a task in itself. He mostly spent his time hidden away inside some giant storm cloud, one not even her powers could penetrate. But when she finally got a glimpse of the soul, her heart dropped to her feet. Such a kind and pure soul turned hollow because of her idiot sister. Not only that, but for him to have gained so much power in such a short amount of time. Her feet hit paved ground. Guards tried to stop her from advancing, but one look from the angry woman froze them in their tracks. With a flick of her wrist, heavy red doors were flung open, nearly snapping them from their hinges. A young man sat behind a desk, his eyes widening upon seeing the pure anger in her eyes. The Soul King could honestly say he had never seen the kind and caring Kami so, not herself? Benny, the King of Souls, let out a low groan. That was not his name. Yes, Kami-sama. He wouldn't dare question it with the goddess as she was now. Uzumaki Naruto. That was a name, one that the king had heard often, not to mention he had people constantly searching the districts of Soul Society for him. But alas, he had held no such luck. My men are still looking for him. We have had no luck so far. Sorry, Kami-sama. The woman in white, gently, moved a few strands of hair behind her ear and narrowed her gaze on the man before her. Call them off. There is no point. My sister fucked up big time. Benny ignored the curse that was dropped in front of him. Now was not the time for such things anyway. Was he entered back into the cycle or reincarnation? If so, I can just have someone watch over him, make sure everything is okay. She made him hollow. That sentence froze the air in the room. Benny looked around at his guards and waved them off. This was not something they needed to hear. Are you sure? Kami spread her hands out in front of her, bringing up the blonde before he died, and when she was last able to get a visual of him, sure, the top half of his face wasn't visible because of the mask, but the structure and even the fox-like traits made it all too easy to see that it was the same man. I'm pretty damn sure. Do you honestly think I would be here, in this stupid-ass palace if I wasn't? My palace is not stupid. Benny inwardly thought. He looked between the two images and frowned. This looks like a Vasto Lord. But that can't be, not enough time has passed, right? Wrong. Kurama, while his intentions were good, and would have been had he become a Shinigami. When Naruto became a Hollow, Kurama's chakra drastically increased his evolution and power. Their friendship and bonds has created a Hollow of monstrous strength. While he doesn't seem incredibly hostile towards Shinigami, he is not a big fan of them. Not to mention he has a kingdom, and even a second Vasto Lord following him. Sister fucked up big time. Kami clutched onto her own arms tightly, a deep frown adorning her face, her previous anger no longer present. I wanted to give him a second chance to have a happy life, his last one. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how many people he saved, how many wars he ended, he was still seen as a monster. The Soul King shifted behind his desk. He could see the regret in her eyes, forcing him to sigh internally. We'll storm his kingdom and purify his soul. He should be easy enough to track once he enters Soul Society. You won't be able to enter his kingdom. It's inside a storm cloud that not even my powers can penetrate. Purify him if you can, but I will be honest. If you go to war against him, don't expect to come away with all of your soldiers. He is smart, incredibly so, and he would go down fighting to his last breath. Benny, if you can, please try to speak to his rational side first. Kami slowly faded from view, clearly having spoke her part. Benny looked down at his desk and frowned. Uzumaki Naruto, I don't even know you, yet you're already causing me a headache. I should inform Soul Society. They need to know about a threat like you. A sneeze left Naruto, causing his face to scrunch up cutely as he pouted. Someone must be talking about me. Sayal looked towards the blonde with a happy smile on his face. Only good things I could assume. But as I was saying, if I could just have a handful of us enter the human world again, we would be able to have great leaps in our technology. Again, the Ajaches looked like a strange humanoid octopus. He was very happy that Naruto had found him and his brother. Under the blonde, regardless if the blonde would admit they were his underlings or not, he was really able to feed that strange craving for knowledge that he had. Naruto seemed to be in deep thought for a while before shrugging his shoulders. I don't see why not. I want you to make sure that we don't draw attention to ourselves, though, understood? And also, were you able to get those 3 bracelets I asked you for? Sayal sent one of his tentacles backwards and fiddled around on the bench behind him for a moment, slowly bringing it back and showing 3 rings. They were simple bands, each with a small vial attached to them. You and your patrol groups. At least it gives me something to do while I wait for new things to research. I'm glad, after all, I couldn't have done all of this without you, Sayal, Naruto stated proudly, taking the devices from the Hollow and shaking his hand. The scientist gave a bright smile. Least I could do. You and Lady Neliel saved us after all. Plus you have given me many interesting tasks to look into. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the man. The same action was returned to him, the once joyful atmosphere vanishing in a second, and the special task? I am nearly done. I believe you should have all your answers within a few years. I've just been so busy with it lately, that I need a break. As I said, a trip to the human world will allow me to refocus on the important things. Sayal told him honestly. He had been working on the same task for nearly a decade now, and it was starting to wear on him. The blonde nodded and released the Hollow's hand. Understood. You have my permission like I said, but don't force anyone. You know the rules. Hi, I'll behave. Well, mostly, the Ajaches gave a small chuckle at his own words. Now don't you have to speak to your people, Naruto-sama? I already told you to drop the sama, deadpanned the blonde. The action merely caused the scientist to give into full-blown laughter. Good one, Naruto-sama, but you are deserving of the respect I give you, thus I will not simply stop. Plus I enjoy it. It is good to know I am not in charge. The Vasto Lord sighed. Remind me again why I am the leader. Cause someone else would get it wrong, Sayal responded without a second of thought. Much like you always bring me the difficult tasks, because someone else would do a subpar job. Naruto shook his head with a smirk. Thanks for the reminder. Just remember to let me know when you are taking the expedition so I can keep an ear out and tighten the defenses. Will do, Commander. Just make sure to keep Lady Neliel out of my labs. I really am thankful to her, but she really does create such a mess in that form. Naruto could sympathize with the man, he really could. Nell's Vasto Lord form was too large, but he couldn't tell her that. She was beyond ecstatic when she evolved. Just more of a reason to look into that, am I correct? The Ajaches shook his head and chuckled. I see your point. Now if you will excuse me, Naruto-sama, I would like to get back to work. The blonde waved a hand into the air. Yeah. Talk to you soon, Sayal. Naruto gave a warm smile as he left what some would call the creepy labs. The bright moonlight hit his eyes and he gave a small frown, walking forward to where he would meet the new recruits. He had spent the past couple of days training them, and deemed them ready to go on their first patrol. It was not much of a shock that when he arrived at the meeting place, they were already waiting for him. He jingled the bracelets in his hands. These will allow for you to move through the cloud without injury. The first few times you are to stay within my line of sight. When I deem you strong enough, and see that you won't be a threat to the safety of those living in the cloud, you will be able to do your rounds at any time, and will no longer need to return these to me at the end of each shift. Tear rose a brow at his words, while Ulquiorra nodded sharply. Grimjaw for once didn't have much to say nor express. You do not trust us? The shark like a judge's question, somewhat hesitant for his answer. Trust normally meant you weren't seen as suspicious, meaning you were not on the list of possible executions. At least that was how it worked in the smaller kingdoms she had been in. Naruto shook his head. I trust each of you with my life, and I want to ease you into the responsibility of protecting the lives of everyone in the cloud. That is what this position means. Everyone inside of here depends on us to keep him safe. I know the cloud is strong, but even I don't know how much punishment it would take before it was split apart. Halabel widened her eyes at that, having not thought of the situation in such a light. She would be responsible for Mila Rose's protection, not to mention Sun's son, who had started to grow on her. That bubbly but crafty snake. Now she was starting to feel like she wouldn't be able to do the job properly. She seemed to lean away from the blonde, something Naruto picked up instantly. A little worried now, Tear-san. His question earned a small nod from the judges. I didn't think about it properly, and I don't know if I am comfortable with being in control of the safety of others. Naruto walked forward and clapped the bracelet onto her wrist with a large smile on his face. The act shocked her, causing him to give a warm laugh. I believe in you. That kind of attitude is what I look for here. It is clear you care about others, even if it be only a few. I'll show you what you need to do. Just trust in me, Tear, and I will make sure you don't let down those you care about. The blonde moved forward and clapped the other bracelets onto the newer judges. Ulquiorra received his on his wrist like Tear, while Grimjaw had his attached to the tail that was deadly still. The blue band was something of an oddity. They each looked at the small vial on it with high levels of curiosity. Tear slowly changed her vision to the two beside her, wondering why they didn't have to give some sort of questioning speech like she had. That vial is concentrated Ryatsu from myself. As you may remember from when we arrived, I walked up to the wall and placed my tail into it, pulling it open. Well, that vial will allow you to do the same. Also, I have been speaking to Grimjaw and Ulquiorra already. Mr. Panther enjoys fighting, while our Dark Knight here likes order and routine. Sure, there are other positions they could be in, but I spoke to them about it, and both liked the idea. Naruto waved them to follow as they approached the cloud. Now channel your Ryatsu towards the bracelet, or tail clip for some, and wrap it around my own. Slowly push it towards where you plan to make contact with the wall. Like so. Naruto lifted his hands towards the raging cloud. They watched it slowly turn to a lighter gray before wrapping around his hands. I know it looks different, that's because I am not ripping it open, merely moving through it. Once you have made the connection, stretch the light grey cloud over your form and slowly walk inside. Just keep walking forward and I shall see you on the other side. They watched as the Vaster Lord was swallowed to the protective cloud, vanishing from their view. Nell slowly walked up behind the group with a large smile on her face. I remember my first time too. I was so scared. I watched when the group of hollows tried to invade and were electrocuted by the wall. Thankfully you didn't have to see that, so it shouldn't be as scary for you. Nell walked forward and passed straight through the wall without any problem. We weren't worried, Tear mumbled, unable to get the picture of dying hollows out of her mind. Slowly she did as instructed, feeling the strange sensation of Naruto's Ryatsu forming a protective layer around her. She could nearly taste the water in the thin layer of cloud. Little did she know that her two companions were much the same, only feeling slightly different elements. Tear broke from the cloud. Taking a deep breath, she looked around to see Naruto and Nell standing there with knowing looks on their faces. Feeling refreshed, Tear, Naruto questioned, seeing how she stiffened him, and Nell gave a small chuckle. I would ask why, but you would merely ask for me to wait until the other two arrive. Tear stated calmly, seeing the foxy hollow smile widen. Naruto gently tilted his head to the side. You are learning my behavior quite quickly, Tear. It's a little spooky. Are you stalking me? He gave a small shriek and jumped up into Ne's arms as she held the shuddering Vasto Lord. Halabel looked at the blonde in shock. This was the man that hundreds of hollows followed, nearly without question. With a sigh she hung her head, simply wishing for the others to hurry up. Thankfully it didn't take much longer. Now that everyone is here, I shall explain what you felt when you moved through the cloud. My Ryatsu was seeing if it was compatible with you all, but from what I have noticed so far, I am either a universal donor or I just have awesome picking abilities. He was placed back on the ground and spread his arms out wide. I am a storm fox, or as some stuck-up skeleton may call me, the Crimson Storm. This means, each of you is an elemental type hollow. Naruto nearly clapped his hands in joy, but we shall go into that further when we return. For now stay with Nell or myself, we'll show you what to do. Tearpov, I kept the appearance that my eyes were taking in my surroundings, but the majority of my attention was drawn to the blonde fox-like hollow. He was beyond strange, but it felt almost like an act. His head turned to face me. Those piercing blue eyes, so much like ice, nearly froze me on the spot. Without saying a word, he faced the front again, looking over the desert, seemingly back to doing his self-appointed duties. He spoke of protecting others. I even felt how calm and protecting his Ryatsu seemed to be, yet I couldn't bring myself to just trust in my feelings. I needed proof. Plus, what was all this talk of elemental hollows? He said I was one. Does this mean I would become like him? My turn to look at Grimjaw. He had a small prance in his step, enjoying the concept of gaining more power. I knew that was the reason he followed me. Now it seemed to be the very same reason for why he would follow this, Naruto. I felt around me. Neliel's aura was faint, but I could tell that it held great power. Naruto, on the other hand, I couldn't even get a small feel of his aura. I furrowed my brows in concentration, pushing the limits of my ability to sense those around me, an act that did not pass by the fox. Trying to probe me A tier, all you had to do was ask Yano. He held that small smirk of his, like this was all some kind of game. The others looked towards me and I gave a sharp nod, trying to show that he was correct in his assumptions. I gave a small cough, clearing my throat. I cannot sense your Ryatsu. I was just wondering why not. My question seemed to affect him. His smile vanished and a pensive look came over his face. It slowly turned into a warm smile, a small laugh escaping his lips. My Ryatsu is depressing, so I hide it from people. The tears I never cried as a human granted me the control of water, the words I wasted trying to spread joy and peace, air, and the energy I used to protect those that mattered to me, lightning. The deeds of my past life gave me the power to make a difference here. If I have to hide my aura of despair from the rest of the world to do so, I shall, without any regret, even if it makes me seem weak at times, he stated calmly, brushing a few strands away from his face. It was in that moment, I noticed he was not the fool he acted like at times. He was just trying to make us happy. That was a word I had almost forgotten. Would I really be able to feel an emotion as joyful as that though? A better question would be, did I deserve such a thing? I had to become a monster to survive. I had taken the lives of so many that I could no longer consider myself noble, nor deserving of joy. I gave a small shake of my head, clearing the thoughts I harbored. I apologize for bringing it up, Naruto-sama. I watched as the edges of his mouth twitched. It was not a joyful twitch though, as it slowly turned into a frown. He took a few terrifying steps towards me, resting a hand on my shoulder and looking into the eyes behind my mask. His head tilted to the side in a childish manner. If I want you to trust in me, I first need to place trust in you. I want to be seen as a comrade by each of you, not some bossy man. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I will answer them to the best of my ability. But finally, please don't add Sama to my name. I do not want mindless drones. I want friends, people I can count on to watch my back as I will theirs. His tone was even, but it was like he was asking us a question, not just telling us what he wanted. Naruto slowly backed away and I was able to release a breath I had not been aware of holding at bay. I doubt that he meant to scare me. With the words he had just spoken, it would be counterproductive. It was just like he was trying to draw my attention purely to him. I was able to see the storm of emotion inside of his eyes. No, despite his attitude, this Hollow was no child. His power was impossible to even try to imagine. I could still hear the roaring of the storm cloud behind us. The one thing that stopped others from trying to disrupt the small semblance of peace he had managed to obtain, a power that had wrapped around me, accepted me. Normal Naruto lifted his hand up to his ear, showing off some strange piece of technology, his voice a murmur to the rest of the group. Nell was able to pick up the name Sahil, letting her know he was talking to the head scientist. She watched a parade of emotions fly across the blonde's face, before finally setting on a grim visage. We'll be back soon. Please continue and inform me more when I arrive. Naruto spoke softly, before his teeth started to bare and a faint chuckling was heard as the line went dead. Nell carefully watched Naruto to see how he would react, already knowing how Sahil finished the conversation. You okay, Naruto? The blonde snapped his head up and smiled to the group. Yeah, our rounds are done for today. Sahil thinks he has had a breakthrough in the project and will need our help for a bit, Nell, meaning your ban from his labs has been lifted temporarily. Nell gave a small cheer as she started pushing Naruto back towards the cloud, talking about how important it was for them to get a move on. The blonde himself gave a small smirk. Project Hoyo del Alma, Blade of Soul, was now well underway. Chapter 4. A small groan escaped Naruto's mouth as he sat up from his bed. Yes, a bed. Something Sahil had made for him. Seeing him being used by humans the last time he was in their world, their form seemed to be similar to the blonde's current one. Hence why it was made for the blonde, who could not deny that it was comfortable. Speaking of Sahil, the young Hollow had made a breakthrough in his research. What he had expected to take a few more years would take only a few months with the new information. Today he would be leading a group into the human world. A list of names had already been given for the event. Surprisingly, Sahil wanted the new patrol group to tag along with him. Naruto fumbled around his neck, checking to make sure his weapon was still in place, before walking forward onto the tiled surface and summoning some water to wash over him. He remembered bathing to be important before he ended up here. He gave his body a quick shake, some of his fox traits still yet to leave him, before using a warm gust to dry him down. With a tired sigh he walked out of his home. Calling it a home would not do justice though. The place was like a palace, despite Naruto's protests. The Hollows of Symphonia had decided that their leader was not allowed to be outdone by the fool Baragon. Nell was seen walking down the pathway to him, a bright smile on her face. "Did you sleep well, Naruto?" the bubbly Vasto chirped, giving a small stretch, and feeling her back click into place. "I did indeed. Are you going to be joining us today, Nell?" Naruto questioned, cracking his fingers and tilting his head to the side, getting a small relieved pop for his action. He watched as she nodded, heated, showing she was not planning on being left behind today. "Can you round up Tyr and the others for me then? I need to go see Sahil quickly before we leave." Nell moved forward and rested her forehead against Naruto's mask, causing him to raise a brow in question at her actions. "You're not just going to run off again, are you?" Given his past actions, the question was not too far-fetched. The blonde raised a hand and rested it against the side of Nell's face. "No, not this time, Nell." A smile tugged at his lips. "I won't leave without you again." A strange sensation passed over him. Something moist and warm pressed against his cheek, right near one of his fangs. "Nell?" he questioned in confusion, seeing her pull away with a confused look of her own. "Sorry, but I remember watching those humans do something like that last time we were there. It was a situation much like this, so I just thought that is what you were meant to do," she asked innocently. Naruto raised a hand to his cheek slowly in confusion, a strange warmth in his stomach, one that felt distantly familiar to him, yet he could not place an emotion he held to it. "Possibly, maybe that is something you could look into when we are there today." Little did he know that Nell was feeling the same warmth. She also knew what it really meant. A kiss was meant to be a symbol of care for someone else. It was clear to most that Nell cared a lot about the blonde Vasto Lord. "How much, though, no one really knows. Will do, and I will be able to get the others for you, Naruto." Nell watched as he turned away and headed to Sahil's place, fighting the small frown that wanted to form. Nell Ilpov. I watched that blonde walk away. That's all he really seemed to do these days. I know he is busy and wants to make sure things are running smoothly, but for once, I wish he would just relax so we could spend some time together, like we used to. Plus there was this new Tyr character. Personally, I am not a fan. I know it seems petty, and maybe even a little bit childish, but I feel like she is trying to take my place. Not to mention I am still trying to get a feel for all these emotions that are running around in my head. It isn't meant to feel like a circus in here, right? Well, I hope not, cause that would give me a headache pretty quickly. Wait, what's a circus? Anyway, I guess I just feel a little underappreciated. Sure, everyone calls me Lady Nellil, which is pretty cool, and I keep trying to get him to call me Nell, cause that's what Naruto does, but everyone seems to go to him with their problems. I am here too, you know. It isn't like I don't know what it is like to be a hollow. Hell, I have been one longer than Naruto. Who do you think it was that taught him? Yeah, well, now that I think about it, in a way people still are coming to me with their issues. I mean, if I taught Naruto, that means that the advice he gives out is partly mine, right? How awesome. It still doesn't help much though. Everyone always sees this happy-go-lucky Nell, cause that's what I think they need to see to know everything is still fine. But I don't feel like that. I sometimes wish Naruto had never come up with this idea of a kingdom. I get lonely now, and he seems much more distant, even when we joke around together, which is spread to far apart between session for my liking, by the way. And look, I managed to rant my entire way to the female side of the kingdom. I gave a sigh, not looking forward to fetching Tyr Halibel. She was strong for an Ajutchis, but in the end that was all she was. I could crush her if I wanted. No bad, Nell, stop thinking like that and put on happy smiley face. I felt the corners of my mouth turn upwards, thinking about when it was just myself and Naruto, the fun we used to have running through the desert as Ajutchis. Who would have thought we would have been able to create all this way back then? I knocked gently on her door, already having memorized where she lived. A few moments passed and I was about to knock again, only for the door to open. She stepped out into the light with sluggish movements. I noticed a few new streaks of blue and inwardly cursed. She had started to evolve already. Tyrpov. I moved to my feet, finding the action more painful than normal. I heard someone knock against the door to my housing. An action that should be addressed promptly if I was informed right. My body felt stiff beyond all logical reasoning. I had actually been taking it a little easier in my training lately, trying to avoid further unexplained injury. Apparently such an act would not help, as I felt much worse than any day prior. In fact, it almost reminded me of my first days as an Ajutchis, when I was found by the group of males, always forced to fight at the front of the group. I could feel a slight wheezing in my chest. It was followed by a small but harsh cough, one that made me stumble forward, towards my destination. It was my duty to open this door for the hollow on the other side, one that I was not going to fail in. Upon opening it, I saw Lady Nellil standing there, her face turning from a bright smile to one of anger and what seemed to be another that I couldn't put my finger on. All I knew was that angry Vasto lords were never good, even a ditzy one like Lady Nellil. So pushing down any pain I felt at the moment, I took a step forward and looked up to her and gave a small nod. "How can I help you, Lady Nellil?" She quickly shook her head, the frown and anger vanishing. Inwardly I was relieved. I had the pleasure of watching herself and Lord Naruto spar a few weeks prior. Well, calling it a spa would be an exaggeration. The two were merely poking fun and she was trying to force him to eat once again. But nonetheless, my point is that the Ryatsu they were just throwing around in their techniques was staggering. Even if I was in prime fighting condition, I doubt I would last more than a moment against her if she became serious. I was coming to fetch you for the expedition, but now I am not sure if you would be able to go, she trailed, instantly causing me to become defensive. It sounded almost like she didn't want me to go, like something was wrong with me escorting Naruto to the human world. It would seem that she saw I was not happy with where the conversation was heading. Her hands shot up into the air and I flinched back, but a click of Lord Naruto's fingers was all it took to kill a Hollow. I would be prepared if she tried such a move. No, what I mean is, you have felt weaker lately, haven't you, Tear-san? Lying would get me nowhere, but I didn't exactly want to admit that I was becoming weaker, especially not out loud. It would seem that she understood such a thought. It's okay, really it is. It's great in fact, but you are going to need to take it very easy for some time. Let the others pick up their game a bit. I shook my head, not understanding what she was trying to get across to me. Why couldn't her and Lord Naruto be more direct with how they approach situations at times? I do not know what you mean, Lady Nelliel, I questioned hesitantly. All anger was gone from her form, but it was still not worth the risk. You have gained new markings on your mask and body. This means that either you are a very strange Hollow, or you are going through the evolution to Vasto Lord. It is really painful and you will be next to useless during the final stages. Naruto would be able to explain it better. I saw her flinch a little as she said that. Did she have an argument with the blonde? It was probably for the best that I don't bring it up. And you will need to see Sayal at some point. It is merely to get readings on your Ryatsu near the start of evolution, so we will be able to track these kinds of things, and have a rough estimate of how everyone is doing here, she continued, causing the majority of my defenses to fall. Many Hollows dreamt of becoming a Vasto Lord, and here I was in the process of obtaining such a thing. A strange thought, not to mention I would become closer to Lord Naruto if Lady Nelliel was any indication of what such a position meant. Plus I would have the strength to defend Mila Rose and Sun Sun properly. But if what Nelliel said is true, I would not be of any use for a time before that happened. Maybe there was a way to speed up the process. Pain was something I was not entirely fazed with. I had suffered enough to know how to endure, but from the small tastes of Lord Naruto's Ryatsu I have been able to obtain, the blonde has felt it even worse. His very soul seems to scream in agony. Thank you for informing me, Lady Nelliel. I should inform Lord Naruto about such a thing, and see if there is anything I could do in such a state to help. It would be up to our blonde leader as to what happened. I merely hoped that my Vasto Lord form was smaller than Lady Nelliel's. I would prefer to be more like Lord Naruto in that regard. Maybe even blonde like him. It seemed to be a nice color, and the deep blue he wore goes nicely with it. Nelliel gave a small nod. Well, Naruto is over at Sayal's at the moment. The only thing I can say is be careful when you enter. Sayal is very finicky when it comes to his experiments. He doesn't like anything in his labs being touched. Anyway, I still have to go fetch Ulquiorra and Ginjo. They are meant to be going on this expatiation as well. The Vasto Lord spoke calmly before turning around and leaving. It gave me a few moments to think to myself. If I was less reserved I may have squealed. If my body didn't hurt so much I may have jumped for joy. But I guess I would just have to settle for a large smile, one that nobody would see because of my mask. Me a Vasto Lord. It was still a while before I would reach there, but even still, it was now closer than I had ever thought it to be, and I couldn't stop the small tingles that ran through the tips of my claws. Naruto Pov. So there were test tubes, some tables, and what a shocker, more test tubes. Sayal really didn't bother to hide his work at all, but then again, most Hollows were banned from his labs quite quickly, him finding him too much trouble to have around. I heard some yelling as I entered. Ulvort, Sayal's older brother, seemingly in trouble, yet again. From the sounds of things, he had got some papers in the wrong order. I couldn't tell the order for most of the things around here. I mostly just pointed at cool looking things, and talked about my big book. My big book that only Sayal and myself had read. The octopus adjudges, at least I think he is an octopus. Anyway, he is really smart, and I am apparently a good leader. I don't know, the stuff kind of comes naturally to me. Must have been a leader of something in my past life, but if that was the case, why was I always so sad? I gave a small sigh as I pushed open a large door, giving a few small knocks against it as I entered. Normally I would just barge in, but after the small explosion I caused last time, from not knocking, I figured it was best to play by Sayal's rules. At least when we were in the labs anyway, and he was cool enough with it, or at least he seemed that way. Yo Sayal, you in here? I called, hearing the sound of glass break against the floor, followed by some incredibly colorful language. Ulvort clearly dropped something again. A few moments later the very Hollow I was looking for appeared before me, giving a small bow. You called Naruto-sama, or is it Lord Naruto now? I saw the small smirk on his face. He was doing this purely to get on my nerves. It was working. I played calm though, giving a small shrug of my shoulders. I think I have given up telling you what to call me. I am just here to tell you that we will be looking at heading OU. I was cut off by a soft knock at the door. Such a thing was beyond annoying. I snapped my head around to see who would do such a thing, even though I really had no decent excuse for telling him off. I saw a confused-looking Tear. The markings on her mask were different, not to mention that she had some blue bolts of lightning running down her legs now. An interesting new feature. My body turned and my head gave a small tilt. Tear, can we help you with something? I think I did a very good job of hiding any previous agitation. Apparently she was not able to pick up on such a fact. That was a plus. I didn't need people knowing of even more ways to irk me, but from the smirk on Sahil's face, I knew he saw it. Lady Nelil believes I may have started to evolve. She thought it would be best that I came to speak to Sahil-san, and while you were here Lord Naruto. Inwardly I cringed at the way she addressed me. I knew Sahil was laughing inside himself at such a thing. I was told that you would probably not take me today. While I will regret not going, I can see the reason behind your actions, and ask if there is anything I could do during this state of evolution. I gently played with the fangs on my face. The process for becoming a Vasto Lord was quite painful, not as much as fighting without any skin on your body. An odd memory, but one nonetheless. Anyway, I was busy trying to find a place where she could fit in during her evolution. She seemed intent on working during such a state, even though I just let Nell do what she wanted during it. Meanwhile, with Tear's permission, Sahil had started to take Ryatsu readings with some strange little device of his. It broke the last few times he used it on me, but maybe he was just having issues with getting readings or it was not finished yet. Ah, Miss Hallabell, wasn't it? She answered his question with a sharp nod. Why was everything about her so sharp? Her personality was one such thing. I had tried countless times to get her to lighten up. I would have to try again once she was finished with her change. The two were busy conversing for some time. I was ignored mostly, which was good because I was more than a little lost at the moment. It was such a pox time for her to start evolving right before a trip to the human world. Actually, that is a strange word. Pox. It sounds rather posh but isn't, just a little bit older than what most people are used to. But this really couldn't have come at a worse time. We were all getting prepared to move out. With a small sigh I knew what to do, and thankfully they had finished talking already, Sahil having already gotten the majority of the information he needed, and had booked some appointments or something to get the few pieces he was missing. Tear, her attention shifted onto me. I could feel that her eyes were not going to waver, as if she was telling me that I was all that mattered at the moment. Such a strange sense of loyalty. The job I have for you may seem easy at first, but like your last one, if much harder than it looks. I want you to pretty much make sure everyone is happy. This involves going around to the other groups and finding out how they are going, if they need anything and these kinds of things. Most of them will tell you not to bother, that they will make do with what they have. They will need a little push. If there is anything they could use to help them in any way, I would like to know. I spoke calmly and warmly, watching her give a stern nod, and try to bow again. I was really getting tired of her attempting such a thing. I firmly grabbed onto her shoulders and stared her down. Her eyes seemed to shrink from mine, as if she was scared. For the moment, that may be for the best. If you are going to keep up this act, I will strap you down. It hurts you to bow. I can see that. Everyone can see that, so stop it. If you feel the need to continue such an act when you are better, then do so. You can do whatever you want, but I will not have you hurting yourself because of some ridiculous need to bow before me. Do you see Sahil doing such a thing? Do you see Nelil? If I have to make this an order, Tear, I will. I all but bit out, watching her stiffen in my grasp as I pulled her back to her feet. I slowly let go and eased away from her, in case she tried again. She was even more stubborn than myself at times, a fact that amazed me. Hi Lord Naruto, I am sorry if I offended you. She seemed somewhat upset, something I knew I didn't like. With a sigh I walked forward, feeling bad as she flinched with my movements. I rested a hand on the side of her face like I did Nell. It had a strange way of drawing one's attention to you when you spoke, even calming them just a tad. You only offended me by placing your well-being below my own. I enjoy your company, Tear, and I look forward to when you finish evolving so we can see what you are really capable of. But until then, please take it easy. We are rather weak during our evolution. I feel this is the reason why we are so few in numbers. Thus I don't want you doing things that may injure you or cause you any more pain than what is needed. She nodded into my hand and gave a small sniff, one that was a little creepy but it seemed to relax her. Normal Pov. Sahil cleared his throat softly, breaking up what could be described as a scene before him. I believe we have things to do. Right Lord Naruto? A small chuckle being held under his breath. Naruto shrugged his shoulders at the man. That we do. Please rest, Tear. When you are feeling up for it, you can talk to the groups. And don't worry, I will take you on the next trip to the human world. That is a promise. The shark like a judges gave a sharp nod to the blonde, watching as him and Sahil quickly filed out of the labs. Yulvort, try not to destroy all of my notes before I return. Even you should be able to handle such a task. Naruto gave a small shake of his head. Maybe you were a little hard on him. It must not be easy having such a bulky form. It was an offhanded comment, but one that hit Tear hard. She looked down at her hollow form and clenched her eyes shut, praying that her Vasto Lord form would be slimline, like Naruto's. He was right, such bulky forms really are troublesome. She had watched Nell often knock things over by accident. Giving a small shake of her head, Tia carefully left the lab, not wanting to be any more of an issue for anyone in her current state. She would head to the groups and see if they needed anything, like Naruto asked. Hopefully this evolution would pass soon. She didn't like being restricted from going with the patrol group already. Grimjo Pov. Okay, so things aren't as bad as I thought around air. I was a little hesitant about the whole no fighting thing. Okay, so I was completely against the idea, but the male hollows have this arena thing where they all jump in and fight. So that issue was taken care of quickly. Next I got into this patrol group, that is A at best. We don't see a lot of action, but there is the odd scuffle every now and again. Well actually, thinking back on it, those fights were pretty full on, so I guess it ain't too bad actually. The best things would all have to stem from our crazy blonde leader. First off, while I want to be king, and if he gives me the chance to take him out, I will. But anyway, first off he is a Vasto Lord, that means he has spent his time as one of us. He knows how to survive and apparently lead a large group. I am learning a lot from the punk, like these new types of attack. Apparently my hollow nature is quite adaptive to the influx of his storm-type Ryatsu. Whatever that means, all I know is I can use some flashy new moves that blow stuff up real good. Halabel is getting weak though, we can all see it. I am glad she isn't leading us anymore. I can feel her Ryatsu. It feels flimsy, like it could break with the change of the wind. I got no idea what this means, but I know she is really sucking up the new leader's ass. And from the expressions he pulls, he doesn't like being reminded he is in charge. Good thing I don't plan on doing so. After all, if he doesn't want to rule, he can just give the crown to someone more fitting, like myself for example. Mila Rose is off doing some gardening crap. I think it is a bit of a farce, but that is where the majority of our food comes from. I still think we should have lower hollows handling such a thing. That is if they could stand being near Naruto's and Nellil's aura. And what is with everyone calling him Lord and Lady? That shit makes no sense to me. Sure they are strong, and they are Vasto Lord. Wait, could that be why? Would that make Nellil a Vasto Lady? This thinking stuff hurts. I have been trying to take Ulquiorra's advice. Freaking Bat Boy is thriving here. People are starting to call him the Tempest Bat. But he needs to get angry or something. He's always so serious, and it gets on my nerves. But anyway, we are going to the human world today. Apparently the kingdom does this every couple of years, and we always learn a lot from it. I heard some whispers that this Sahil guy is coming along with us. The man is meant to be some kind of freaky scientist. Oh, I guess that is him with Naruto now. What is he? Some kind of octopus? Ulquiorra Pov. Grimjo is being a pain again. He has that face on him. It looks like he is trying to think. He should give it up. I know I told him to give it a shot, but after seeing what he does with the limited brain he has, it would be best if he didn't. Lord Naruto has shown up. It must be time to go. You really didn't expect much more, did you? Normal Pov. Naruto scratched at the side of his mask, an almost bored look on his face. Well, it looks like everyone is here. He quickly did a quick look over the small group. There were a few other hollows among them, but those that stood out most were Grimjo and Ulquiorra, seeing as he spent the most time with them. When Nell arrives we shall leave. A few minutes passed as the slow sound of hooves clunking against the pavement entered their ears. Inwardly Naruto gave a frown. Something was wrong with Nell. He had known her long enough to be able to tell just from the way she moved. Noticing that everyone's eyes seemed to be on her, she quickened her pace and came to stand beside Naruto, dodging his questioning eye for the moment. Now that we are all here, he trailed, swiping a hand at the air and ripping open a large portal. We can get going. The journey to the human world was brief. Naruto knew the exact location of where they were headed, meaning the tunnel was only a few steps, not some giant walk like some other hollows were fated to endure. The group exited the portal and looked around. A few whistles were given while others found it a little difficult to breathe due to the lack of spirit particles in the air. Naruto looked around for a few moments, his eyes slowly taking in the surrounds. 3 hours. Then I want everyone to meet back here. Try to keep a low profile. This means no killing. I don't want attention drawn to us like that fool Baragan. The expedition gave a stern nod, leaving 5 standing in the air still, Naruto's hands crossed over his chest. Grimjo, Ulquiorra, seeing as this is the first time you two have been here, enjoy your time and study the humans. You never know when the small things they do may come in handy. If you see anything you think may be useful, feel free to take it. Just don't cause much of a scene. I do not want to be fighting off an army of Shinigami. What seemed like a smirk could be seen on the panther's face as he vanished, going off to do his thing. Ulquiorra hung around a few moments longer, dipping his head in acknowledgement to Naruto before taking his leave as well. Sahil, do what you must. Just try to keep the crowd you draw to a minimum. Naruto spoke calmly, just wanting to get everyone on their way as fast as possible. Of course, Lord Naruto, your words are law after all, the scientist chirped, giving a small chuckle as the blonde seemed to twitch in response. Sahil vanishing due to whatever it is a scientist would in such a situation. Naruto turned to face Nell, seeing that she was looking intently at the ground beneath them, like it had become the most interesting thing in her life. Naruto took a few paces, stopping in front of her and looking down as well. I do rather enjoy how green the land is here. It is a nice change from the sandy landscapes we're used to. Nell stiffened before giving a small nervous giggle, trying to play off the fact that she hadn't noticed Naruto get so close, having been lost in her own train of thought. Yeah, it is nice. I'm sorry for being late, I lost track of the time for a few moments. That's okay, I often find myself losing track of time in Weko Mundo. Blasted never-moving moon. Do you want to tell me what is bothering you? The blonde questioned, a heavy silence covering the air for a pregnant moment. Nell quickly shook her head and put on a brave smile. No, there's nothing wrong, I was just thinking was all. She lied, hoping that he would leave it at that. Her hopes were cut short as she felt a hand cup her face. She felt herself being drawn to look at his blue eyes, already knowing that she would end up speaking if she was forced to look at them. Are you sure, Nellil? I thought we were going to tell one another if we thought something was wrong from now on. Naruto's words caused her head to sink a little. He had been honest with her. The only thing he hadn't explained fully was that book of his. She knew he hadn't, and he promised to tell her everything once they understood what it all meant. I just feel like we are growing apart, Naruto. You have become distant, and this will sound selfish, but I am starting to regret helping you with your kingdom if it means that I will lose someone I care about. I guess I have been spending an unfair portion of my time training the new recruits. He slowly leant in and brushed a few strands of hair away from her cheek, placing a soft kiss on the side. I do cherish you, Nellil, but I am confused about what you want from me. The chill that normally rests in my chest is lifted when I am around you. I find it confusing, but the warmth you bring is a pleasant change. Naruto backed up a little and scratched at his cheek with his claws. I may have been avoiding you because I was scared of making a mistake and ruining what is between us. Nellil Pov. When those words left his mouth, I felt my own grow dry. I leaned forward and slowly wrapped my arms around him. He stiffened and I was about to pull my arms back, thinking I had done something wrong. But he gently returned the gesture, resting his arms near the small of my back, just before my strange legs. I hated them, they were stupidly large and made everything so much harder to do. Even putting my arms around Naruto felt strange, like it wasn't natural. I looked up, seeing him looking down at me. It was so strange as our positions were normally reversed, with him being shorter by a small bit. But I enjoyed it, I felt safe. With a small breath I inched my mouth closer to his, pressing my lips onto his. What felt like a small spark shot between us. His lips held a strange taste, but it was one I enjoyed. My mouth opened wider trying to get as much as I could. I must have looked like such an idiot, but Naruto did the same, whether it was to make me feel better, or because he felt the same I didn't know. I let out a small moan, like when you get that itch that has been bugging you for a while, never noticing the increasing Ryatsu around us. I enjoyed being shorter than him, that much I knew already. Our lips parted and he rested my forehead against mine, giving me that cheeky smirk of his. I really did miss this side of him. I let out a small yelp, as a strange feeling ran through my body. My head snapped around in a panic, trying to figure out what could have caused such a thing. It started to hurt, and I started to become scared. Naruto frowned and held me tighter. He didn't need to say anything, because the look in his eyes showed he was as confused as I was. Then it felt like I was on fire, and I started to scream. Naruto was talking to me. I could make out what seemed to be comforting words while he tried to do something, anything. Then it just vanished, leaving me panting. I quickly looked around again, my eyes meeting with Naruto's, and I watched as he grasped at his head. He didn't even grunt, but I could tell he was in pain. He was always like that. Even during his evolution, he hardly made a sound, while I was much more vocal about the pain of such a thing. He looked at me, but it wasn't with the eyes he normally did. While they were still their icy blue, there was something different about them, and when he slowly moved forward, I felt a strange desire to run away. I held my ground though, even as he snaked his clawed hand around my neck, his thumb caressing my cheek softly. He moved forward and kissed me again. This time there was no pain, but I started to feel lighter. I even felt a change in the wind, like it grew colder around us. His other hand wrapped around my waist and lifted me up. I threw my legs around him, deepening the kiss, before both of us suddenly pulled away. I looked down at my body. It was now quite similar to Naruto's own. What was best was that I had 2 legs, not 4. I pushed off of Naruto, missing his strange warmth, but I needed to see what the hell just happened. Normal Pov. When Naruto went back in for the second kiss, their Ryatsu spun out of control. Already the two had a strange bond with one another. Now it would stay till the end of their days. Gone was the goat-like mask Nellil used to wear, replaced by one much like Naruto's own. Her bone chest plate was still intact, but now it was slimmer. Her legs had grown armor plating with tiny little claws on the end of her toes. But what got her the most would have to be the long green thing behind her. Nell's eyes darted from side to side, trying to get a good look of what it was, only to hear Naruto chuckle. That strange look was gone from his eyes now, leaving only the hollow she knew. He moved forward quickly and caught the object of her attention, giving it a firm squeeze and seeing her eyes go wide. You have a tail, Nell. He trailed, letting it sink in. Sure, she had a tail before, but this one looked cute, plus it had a little bone tip. He gently moved it around to her front, where she looked at it for a moment before slowly wrapping her hands around it. Naruto unwrapped one of his own from around him and held it up next to the green one. "It looks like yours, Naruto," she said almost breathlessly, not believe what was happening. What's happening? I don't know, Nell, but Sayal was trying to find something to take his mind from the project for a while, and I think we may have just done that for him. I haven't heard of anything like this before. The blonde let go of his tail and let it join the others, finishing the wraps around his bottom half. Nell seemed to start concentrating on something before her own tail started moving in the same way, creating a skirt of sorts for herself. Naruto rose a brow behind his mask at the action. "Not bad. It will take some time for you to get used to controlling it, but once you do, it becomes almost like second nature." Nell nodded before sniffling and crashing into his chest. Thank you, Naruto. I feel better like this." "I don't really know what I did, Nell, but I am glad I did." With a smile on his face, he warped his arms around her. He really had missed his times together with her. Sadly, now was not the time for such affections. A small cough from behind him grasped his attention. "Sorry to interrupt, Lord Naruto, but I feel a large amount of different Ryatsu coming to this location." Sayal stopped himself as Naruto stepped away and revealed Nell to the scientist, watching his expression change in an instant. "Well, this is much more than I had been expecting to find here. Anyway, I assume this has something to do with what could be a horde of Shinigami heading in this direction." Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "I'm not sure, Sayal, but it seems as if our trip is to be cut short. You still remember how to open a Garganta, right?" The Hollow in question gave a small scoff, finding the insinuation nearly insulting. "Very good. Go with Nell, and take the others to safety. This little fox will hold them off while you get everyone back to the cloud." Nell looked like she wanted to protest, but quickly had her hand taken by the scientist and led away. Naruto took a stance, spreading his legs a shoulder width apart, his arms crossed across his chest and his tails wrapped around his legs. Waiting, that is what those that came noticed. The Hollow was waiting for them. A strange act that meant he knew they were coming. Sayal Pov. Today had been a marvelous day for me. Firstly, I got to taunt Naruto, like normal. Then I got to do some testing on Miss Halibel. Their theories were correct and she is indeed entering the evolution cycle. I was able to try one of my experiments in the human world. Some people were able to notice us, others not so much. I noticed some strange Ryatsu slowly approaching, and thought for a moment that my testing may have alerted people to us. Well, in a way that wasn't planned anyway. But then I took in the Ryatsu of Naruto, and what was Nellil at first, but now, well, she felt like a less powerful Naruto, with only a twinge of her own Ryatsu. I really was able to do the most interesting of things working for the blonde. Beside me was Nell, someone who I would indeed like to examine closely. I have never heard of such a change before. But now was not the time. I gave a small clap and flared my Ryatsu a little, making sure to keep it under the level that Naruto was pushing out to cover us. A few hollows quickly came. Ulquiorra was standing there with his normal expressionless face. There were a few others, but they were lower tier, and mostly just used for lugging things around. Well, in my mind anyway, not even worthy of me knowing their names. Oh, that nearly sounded a little evil. It is time to go. Sadly, we have had some unexpected visitors. If you could please quickly find the others and bring them to me. Myself and Lord Naruto would be most thankful. I gave a charming smile. I was good at that. Then I noticed where his gaze was, landing on the form of Nellil. He had a fair reason to question what happened, as did anyone really. It was no small fact that most of us looked up towards herself and Naruto, and to see such a change, well, it would be interesting. There was no doubt about that. In fact, I am sure Miss Halibel would be most interested if the vibe I am feeling is anything to go by. She seems to have grown an attachment to our blonde leader. All will be explained at some other time, Ulquiorra, but for now we are in quite the rush, so please do as I have asked. Lord Naruto will meet us back at home. I kept my voice calm, but in all honesty, I had finished everything I had wished to do here today. Anything else gained would just be a bonus. The emotionless man gave a small nod before vanishing, a useful ability, one I must learn. It didn't take much longer for the others to gather, and I promptly used the technique Naruto himself had shown me, swiping my hand at the air and ripping it open, picturing the center square clearly, and seeing it open up a few steps away from us. I waved my hand forward, everyone in. As I said, Lord Naruto and myself will explain everything at some other point. But for now, just do as you are asked, and everything will go back to normal shortly. I watched them all pile in, looking back in the direction where we left Naruto. The clouds were getting awfully dense in that direction. A small smile graced my lips. Everything would be fine. Normal Pov. Naruto stood firm, his lips pressed into a thin line. Shinigami. Why are you here? He watched as approximately 30 people in black cloaks stood in front of him. One had a white overcoat of sorts. He would later find out it was to be called a Haori. An older man, with graying hair, stepped forward, his arms resting inside of his sleeves. Hollow, your kind is not welcome in this world. But under the current circumstances I must ask your name. He held an expressionless mask on his face, while those around him clutched at their blades. I am sorry Shinigami, but where I am from, we address ourselves before asking such a thing of another. But maybe that is just my kind showing proper manners where they are needed. The blonde taunted, watching those around him sneer. They slowly tried to surround him, an effort that would prove to be useless. His eyes rested on someone that looked out of place. The rest of the people were all male, with dark hair, sans the older man, with clips inside of them. Each had pale skin. But this one was female, darker skin and purple hair pulled into a ponytail, gold-piercing eyes all but glaring at him, her hands gripping tightly on a short blade. I suppose you are correct, you have made it clear you are not a mindless beast like others of your kind. Kuchiki Jinrei, 27th head of the Kuchiki family and captain of Division 6. Behind me stand a mixture of men from my clan, one from Clan Shihoin and a handful of men from Squad 6. The male slightly narrowed his eyes and Naruto spread an arm out. The blonde gave a slow bow, making a large display with his arms as Sayul often did. He found it quite annoying, so he hoped others did as well. Naruto, no last name that I know of. Vasto Lord and leader of Sinfonia de la Furiosa Tormenta. Naruto noticed the man's eyes go wide, but he continued anyway. It would seem that something has sparked your curiosity, but I will say one thing, at the end of the day I will be returning to my comfortable bed. All that will change is how many will be returning to your own. Watch your tongue hole, a man started to scream, only to be split in half, Naruto having not moved an inch. The blonde Vasto shook his head from side to side. Manners please, myself and Jinrei-san are having a conversation. It is rude to interrupt. A few members of the Kuchiki family made to move, only for Jinrei to hold up his hand, halting them without having to do anything more. In a way you are correct Naruto-san, but I must question your methods of discipline. Furthermore we have been searching for a Vasto lord by the name of Uzumaki Naruto. Would this happen to be you? Naruto tilted his head to the side, giving the man a bored look. I just said, no last name that I know of. I find it rude when people don't listen. Almost as rude as when someone interrupts you. This is exactly what you have done here today, but I will give you a chance to leave. If you do not take it, it is your own fault. Naruto spun on the spot, instantly ripping open a garganta and stepping through in one movement. Once he reached the other side he looked back, taking notice of the Shinigami inching closer. Looking around him he smiled. He had reached the Menos forest with only a few small steps. He gave a small sigh as he watched him crowding around the gate. He could have closed it at any moment, yet he would let them make their own choice. They deserved as much. With swift movements he reached up to his neck, barely touching his spear and turning it large into an actual weapon. Something that would have passed by their vision if they were not focused on the action. A few moments passed and the Shinigami entered through the portal. He closed it behind them, letting them look around at where they had traveled to. Welcome to Weko Mundo. You are currently in no man's land, meaning neither my forces nor the fool Baragans will interrupt this fight. I had hoped you would have taken the smarter choice and left, but now that you are invading Weko Mundo, it is my duty to put you down. And my orders are to take you back to Soul Society. It seems clear that you will not listen to reason, thus we must use force. Jinrei lifted one of his hands, pointing it towards Naruto as a large bolt of lightning flew out, heading for the blonde hollow. The attack hit its mark, sending a large amount of dust into the air. A few of the Shinigami cheered, thinking it was over already, while 3 frowned. The attack was enough to take out a Jillian, nothing more. Their thoughts proved right as the dust cleared, showing Naruto standing there like nothing happened, his head tilted to the side, while a hand rested on his hip, a bored expression on his face. I guess I forgot to add that I am the Storm Fox. But then again the name of my kingdom should have given that away. As skilled as you might be Jinrei-san, none can control a storm better than myself. As if following his cue rain started to fall around them. Looking up some noticed a large cloud forming above their heads. The foxy hollow smirked and spun his spear around in his fingers, watching as large bolts of lightning shot to the ground, taking out the slower Shinigami. Their bodies lay on the ground crispy and cooked. Jinrei clutched at his Zanpakuto, preparing to draw it only to feel something rip through his chest. He looked across to Naruto, seeing his left index finger pointed in his direction, a small ball of energy resting on its tip. His large spear was effortlessly holding back his son-in-law. The wise old man drew his blade. He guessed he would need to release Scattergar. He coughed up blood, and looked down to see another hole had been punched into his body. Koga was being pushed back, while most of the men lay defeated already. Yoruichi was moving around the fox quickly, but was being kept at bay by his tails. I take it from the look on your faces, I am the first Vasto Lord you have fought. This is your own fault. I gave you the chance to leave, but I guess you were just following orders. Funny, they are going to get you killed. You are a fool like Baragan. Naruto's smile left his face. No longer did he play with Koga. He spun his spear once more and shoved it through the man's gut, shattering his Zanpakuto. His eyes went wide as his legs grew weak. He fell forward onto his knees and looked up into the eyes of Naruto. The blonde tore the spear from his gut, and then his form started to roll to the side, and grow taller. Koga heard a loud scream behind him, and noticed he was now quite close to the hollow's feet. Looking up he saw his body and it all made sense to him. To be bested by a hollow, how shameful. Well, he was the strongest from your group. I expected better. Naruto looked between the female and Jinrei, deciding which one was next. Any last words, Jinrei-san? The older man nodded, a small smile growing on his face. May I have a final request instead? His words got a small look of surprise from Naruto, who slowly nodded. Let Yoruichi return to our world. She still has a whole life ahead of her. To waste such a precious thing. I don't think even you are that cruel. After all, like you said, you gave us the chance to walk away. Naruto shrugged his shoulders, pointing his spear at the darker Shinigami. Give me your blade, and I will send you home. Both Shinigami nearly gawked at him for such a suggestion, but he gave a small shrug of his shoulders, raising the Ryatsu resting on his finger again, extending it into a long thin line, one that stopped at the throat of Jinrei. It will teach her to adapt and humble her. If not, I can kill her now and be done with this conversation. Jinrei gave a weak old smile and a nod of his head. Yoruichi looked at him in shock. Jinrei-sama, you cannot be serious about such a thing. You are surely worth more than myself to Soul Society. Hush, girl, do not deny a man his last wish. Keep that grandson of mine out of trouble, and place your sword on the ground. Naruto sent a tail forward and collected the blade, bringing his tail back and wrapping it around his body, the sword resting at the small of his back. He withdrew the energy from his finger, looking blandly across at the duo. Come girl, I shall open the Garganta for you. With understandable hesitance, Yoruichi moved forward, watching the man closely as he opened the portal. Part of her wanted to steal her Zanpakuto back, but after seeing how fast he dealt with Koga, it was ill-advised. As she stepped closer, she felt a hand clasped down on her shoulder. You are taking too long. Do you want to push? The cool voice came, nearly sending a shiver down her spine, but she used Shunpo, quickly stepping through the portal and spinning around, watching as it closed. When it did, she looked around and found herself back where she started. She looked down and saw a strange arrangement of rocks beneath her. Cats don't have Ryatsu, it stated, making her realize he had known she was there from the start. What scared her the most was, he never moved to create the sign. Your request has been fulfilled, Jinrei-san. Now you will come with me. The statement caused a look of shock from the older man. You're not going to kill me. Naruto shook his head softly. I never said I would kill you here. See, my friend and I have been working on a project. The only issue was, we needed a live Shinigami captain. I believe you see where I am going, Jinrei-san. The older man gave a grim nod, his hand on his blade. He moved it up towards his neck, only to feel its weight vanish. I gave you your last request. It is only fair that you give me what we Hollows want. Do not make this more painful than it needs to be, Jinrei-san. Naruto's voice was chilling calm. The old Kuchiki looked to the blonde. Behind him was the image of a crimson fox, a sickly sweet smile on its lips while a fire burned in its eyes. Then it vanished, leaving a smiling Naruto. His tails flew out in all directions and lifted up the bodies of downed Shinigami around him. Naruto placed his spear up near his neck and shrunk it down, attaching it once more to the small chain. The blonde stretched his hands out wide, and gave a small whisper, Espejo, mirror. The air around him seemed to become dry, as a foggy sheet of water slowly formed. Numerous images flashed through it. Before it froze on a certain one, large test tubes could be seen on the other side. For a few moments nothing happened as Naruto stared at the frozen sheet of water. The tail that had been holding onto Yoruichi's Zanpakuto unraveled itself, placing the blade in the blonde's left hand, before shooting across and stealing the one from the old man, mimicking its action from moments before. Naruto calmly walked forward and picked up Jinrei, binding the man's hands behind his back, and carrying him through the mirror. On the other side, Sayal stood with question in his eyes. If Naruto was coming straight here, that meant he had something. If he had something, from the company that he was left in, it could quite possibly be Shinigami. Aside from that, he always wanted to study Naruto's Espejo, and was doing such a thing now. He could see the Menos forest through the mirror. The figure of Naruto slowly became imprinted on the mirror, before the blonde himself stepped through. The scientist's eyes went wide at what he saw. Lord Naruto, is today my birthday? The question caused the Vasto Lord to give a small chuckle. It would seem that way, Sayal, but you said you needed a live Shinigami captain for Project Oyo del Alma, plus I figured you could find something to do with the others. Also, the man in my hands is Jinrei-san. His stay should be somewhat comfortable, if that is not too much trouble. After all, he was just following orders which led to his current situation. Naruto stated calmly as he placed the corpses of the Shinigami onto nearby tables, and placed Jinrei gently on the ground. Sayal gave a small shrug of his shoulders. That shouldn't be an issue, Lord Naruto. After all, it is a task my lord has asked of me. Thus I shall perform it to the best of my abilities, just like my lord would want. If you check back in a few days, Lord Naruto, you will have more answers, but as of now, I have nothing more for you, my lord. Naruto's brow was twitching as he listened to the man speak. You're doing that on purpose, aren't you? I have no idea what you are talking about, my lord.